Hi, it's me, P, and I just did my first autism assessment visit. Unfortunately, it seems like the way towards a diagnosis seems very, very, very long. This was just the first step. What happens is that this place that I went to only takes care of autism and not ADHD, because only the psychiatry takes care of ADHD, and the neuro rehab where I went to only takes care of autism, which is stupid because, as the assessor said, around 60% comorbidity exists between autism and ADHD. So I met this psychologist after work. I waited in the waiting room where there was one of my patients who was waiting for the dietitian. So he wanted to talk to me as his doctor, but I was like in regular clothes. And the psychologist came and we talked for 1.5 hours. And he said, like, it must have been around 15 minutes in, he was implying that he thought that I had autism and ADHD. And it was so weird, but he couldn't put the diagnosis on me because he's not allowed to put, but he said that what he thinks it is autism with a side of ADHD. He said that he himself got ADHD diagnosis at the age of 49 and that his daughter is autistic. No, or his daughter is ADHD. So, well, that's crazy. And he said that he suspected that he had ADHD after finishing up his psychologist degree when he was 38. So he had been waiting for 10 years before he got his diagnosis. And well, he said that he gets a lot of highly gifted girls come by and have autism and or ADHD, and he is fairly familiar with it, and that he was pretty certain that I had it, or either one or both, And it was fun talking to him because, it's the ADHD NE kind of thing where it's like I just go all over the place, and he was also going all over the place. And he was fun, but he said that he's used to taking care of children. He is used to diagnosing children, but sometimes he gets adults, and oftentimes it's adults like me, women who are very educated people who have been masked throughout their lives, and that is more tricky. And he said it is especially tricky because what you're looking for in autism is rigidity, and if you have ADHD as well, then you're like not rigid at all. He gave me the question of, if you were told by your friends that we were going to go and eat pizza, and then the plans change at the last minute, and suddenly you're going to go and eat kebab, what would your thought process be like, or what would you feel about that? And I was like, well, I would be disappointed that I'm not eating pizza because I like pizza and I don't like kebab. And he was like, well, what if it was the other way around? I would be pleasantly surprised if I was eating pizza, but I would kind of have a hard time with that transitioning from one thing to the next. And I had prepared myself on eating pizza, and now I'm not. And so it would get me kind of irritated. There was also the question of like, what are your sensory difficulties? And so I told him about the fact that I'm wearing this ratty sweater because it's comfortable. And he said, do you prefer to wear the same thing pretty much every day? And I'm like, yeah, pretty much. Do you like eating the same thing every day? Yeah, pretty much. But so he said, this might be the only time that we see each other. So he wanted to give me some psychoeducation, basically like tell me about the psychological things. And he drew me a Venn diagram. And in the Venn diagram, there was like 3 circles that overlap. And one of them is ADHD, one of them is ASD, or AST in Swedish, because T is for tillstånd instead of disorder. So those 2 overlap, right? But then there's a third that overlaps, and that is giftedness, or like, having an intellectual disability. And he said, well, I think that you don't have an intellectual disability. So that's how you've been able to compensate. You have these compensatory measures that you've put in place throughout your life, where you could have ADHD and autism at the same time. And you have been able to compensate because of your giftedness, you could say, because of your intellectual level, you've been able to mask these things, overcompensate with the different coping mechanisms that aren't, always the best, but sometimes it's what we have. And he said that the circle in the middle, those 3 things overlap in executive functioning. And so I've been able to function kind of through my my intellectualizing of things, of feelings, of people, of social interactions, of the world. I've been able to manage to keep going along, but there is it's a very small life that I'm living. The life doesn't have many friends, does not have many social contacts, does not have extra responsibilities placed on me. And that's the way that I have been able to go through life, by not placing all of these extra responsibilities on myself. So in a way that has helped me, but it has also hurt me in that my life doesn't have a lot of things that bring joy, And so we were talking about okay, if I want to get a cat, then, that will be placing more responsibility, and more energy will need to be put out in my life in order to live it. But it would also provide me with some happiness, that I'm living a full life. Because right now my life is very just work, sleep, and I can't focus on many other things. And he said, well, a lot of people who have autism, only autism, don't have executive functioning problems, because they can start on their projects and then fulfill them until the end, and they can do these things, But if you have ADHD as well, that gets a little bit complicated, because the ADHD comes and makes you wander. He used the word thought wandering, and he was like, yeah, so your thoughts wander around, and then you have a hard time starting things and finishing things, which is executive functions of initiation and following through on certain things. And he said all of these executive function problems from autism and ADHD gets worse when you get depressed. And it's easier to get depressed if you have these things. And he said, if you have good executive functioning, you can plan better so that you can have a better executive functioning in the future, and so on and so on. So it's a positive spiral. But if you have bad executive functioning skills, which I do, then you can't plan for the future, for being able to do the things that make you have good executive functioning. And so it gets worse and worse and worse, and you spiral into depression and anxiety, which makes your executive functioning worse, which makes everything worse. So he said that he's not allowed to put autism or ADHD diagnosis, because it's so stupid that in my region, there isn't one place that can give you the autism and ADHD diagnosis at the same time. You have to go either to one or the other. And what he's going to do is that he's going to write up a report and see if the group that checks the reports think that I have autism, first of all, and then if they think that I might have ADHD as well. But the most important is that if they think that I have autism, because that is what's going to be able to enable me to go further in the autism diagnosis process. What happens is that the line or the queue for getting an autism diagnosis in this region is years long. So in order for me to get an autism diagnosis a little bit quicker, I'm going to have to go to a private partner in Stockholm and stay there for like around half a day and do all these tests over there, and then go back there once they are ready to give a diagnosis or not. But that might take a month approximately for the referral group to decide if I have, if they think that I might have autism or not. And then from this day, it might take like a few weeks basically before they say yes or no. And then from that date, the region has 3 months to give me a time, which they won't, because the waiting list is approximately 2 years long or something like that. So what I will have to do after 3 months is that I'm going to have to call this rehab center and ask for them to place my referral to Stockholm, to this different provider, basically, this private provider. So it's only then that the countdown starts. So that would be a different list. So I think that, 3 months have gone before I can make that phone call. And from that phone call, it might be 3 months more before I get to start the process in Stockholm. And then once I have started the process in Stockholm, then I don't know how long that will take. So maybe, possibly I will get a diagnosis before the end of 2024. Or maybe not, okay? But I'm glad that I started the process. And it was very validating to hear somebody say that he thinks that I have both, from a person who himself has ADHD and diagnosed late, because he understands the struggles that I'm going through. Sometimes he would say these things and I would be like so related, like I would so relate to what he was saying. And then I was like, oh my God, you know, neurotypicals don't have to deal with this kind of thing, you know? And I could see he had a knowing smile, like he said, I'm going to provide with some psychoeducation at the end of this. And I was like, why would you be providing psychoeducation if you don't think I have autism or ADHD? And, you know, that was what I was thinking. And obviously, it was because he thought that I had both ADHD and autism. And he could see by the way I was just by sitting there. He said that he could see more from the way that I was rather than what I was saying, you know. And I guess this person has a lot of like experience with people of both diagnoses, and he wasn't condescending at all about this. He was pretty funny because I think that he's used to talking to like younger children, you know, and so he's I don't know, he made me laugh. But I was extremely nervous before going to this interview. I actually got heartburn, or like my stomach hurt, and I felt like my whole body was itching, and I'm rarely this stressed out, but I was really stressed out. And he said, well, whether you get a diagnosis or not, the only thing that's, he said that you're already doing certain things, certain steps to get your life in order, we don't need to provide you with any services, but it is good to have a diagnosis in order to like understand yourself. And that's the most important, is that I get a good work-life balance, so that I work on doing things outside of work, and that my work provides me with accommodations, and that I should be able to ask for those accommodations now already, so that I don't get burnt out. He said that he got his diagnosis because both of his parents died, and then he got into depression and burnout, and that's how he came in to psychiatry and got his ADHD diagnosis. So for me, it's because I got burnout, and and we were joking around. He was like, okay, yeah, so you were a good girl at school, what's new, and like, you chose the longest school ever by going into medical school. And it's not fun working. But he said that maybe you should just be an assistant at a lab, or even be the scientist in the lab. Do the same thing again and again. Have that routine at work so that you don't need to worry so much about the routine at home. But I think that the work that I have is pretty routine bound, being a GP doctor, but there are a lot of different things that happen, but it's a limited amount of different things that's happening. And it's not like I need to work night shifts and that kind of thing. There are a lot of different diagnoses, but in general, it's the same diagnoses that come back again and again, like diabetes, heart failure, allergies, that kind of thing. And it reminded me a little bit about, there's this nurse at my work who is an asthma nurse, and she just works with asthma and COPD, and so she does spirometry all the time. So she does that all the time, and unfortunately, she also has to sit in the phone and take phone calls, and that's like the one thing that makes her job hell, basically. If she could just like keep on doing just the spirometry thing again and again, then she would be fine at her job. But because she has to do these calls, it gets hard, and so I need to find like accommodations for my work that would work for me. That's not easy, because my whole work is about knowing a little bit about everything, and I really like my workplace, and I don't want to change my workplace, but I need to explain to my boss the primary things that I told the psychologist, because I don't know if I'll be able to, basically I need to get to the diagnosis team in Stockholm. I cannot be deeply depressed, otherwise I won't be able to do the assessment. So I need basically to not get depressed, and like I can get depressed, but I can't stay depressed until the assessment comes around. So basically that means 6 months of trying to not get burnout, and trying to stay afloat, and trying to find a more sustainable way of working. And I told him, well, like I'm a student still, like I'm still doing my specialization. Is there, there are certain things that I have to do in my work. I have to learn new things all the time because that's part of what I'm doing. He didn't really have an answer to that, because there are certain things that I prefer doing than others, but I don't know. So we did end up like going into life choices and stuff, and I'm never going to meet this guy again, I don't think. So then he asked me like, oh, is there anybody that we can contact regarding your childhood? And well, I said, yeah, you can contact my parents, but they don't know anything about my mental health nowadays. My dad does not know about my emotional life, because he's never been really interested in that. And my mom does not believe me when I say that I'm depressed, and doesn't want to believe it either. But I said better to talk to her in English in that case, rather than not. Well, if we need to talk to someone who knows me from a young age, because I don't have any family in Sweden who knows me. So it would be a telephone call or maybe a Teams call, but I don't know if my parents know how to use Teams. Well, my dad knows, but he has to teach my mom in that case. So yeah, it's nice that there was a confirmation kind of, but it's not at all a diagnosis, and they can't just go on vibes, they have to, it has to be a little bit more deep than this. So I hope for the best. I'll still be wondering about stuff for approximately 6 months in the future. That's the time that I'm giving it. I don't know how much time he was giving it, but it seemed like it was 3 months at the time, I don't know. I'm pretty tired after that. I still need to do a lot of paperwork for my job this afternoon, and tomorrow I'm going to meet a psychologist, and telling him about my life. I don't know, I'm a little bit tired of all this. So yeah, have a great day, everybody.